Okay, so again, still people inside the comments are, they're. Let me put it this way. Most of the people that leave negative comments that keep calling the dinar a scam, or they have no faith in it, are usually people that I talk to that they've been holding on to the dinar for quite some time. Some of them 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, 16 years. So I can understand where every time it seems like their hopes were up, something has come along and, crashed it all over again. And so after that many years, I can understand they probably feel like an abused ex. So, okay. But I went through and again, I've done this before, but I went through and I read all the negative points that people make about why they don't have any faith in the Iraqi dinar. And so let's see if we could go through and either validate or debunk the reasoning, because these all seem to be pointing towards the same things. All right. Now here's the thing that gets me about this. This is in, what is this, Investopia? Okay, so this has been updated in June 25th, 2019. But what I find interesting is I read through these articles, like he's talking about stuff that happened in Iraq in 2012 and 2014. So this will actually give us kind of an overview of the issues. Okay, so Iraq has fallen apart. So it goes on to say in the mid 2014, Iraq was facing its most severe crisis in years. We know that ISIS came in, they established a caliphate. We know that the Sunni Muslims threatened to break up the country, and the Kurdish people, seized Kirkuk. Okay, so we know about that. It was not a good year for, and not a good time for Iraq. But since then, it's changed. Okay, and I'll show what I'm talking about. Like, we know that ISIS no longer has a caliphate there, although there are pockets of ISIS fighters that are still there. We know they don't have a stronghold on the country no more. We also know that the protesters have been doing all they can to fight to get rid of all of the Iranian puppets that are in their government. So that's happening now. There's a new government that's taken place. Okay, so they're saying it's falling apart. It's not. All right, nobody can deny that in 2019 we have not seen the most positive movements towards the change in the Iraqi dinar rate than ever before. Everybody I've ever talked to said we've seen more happen in 2019 than ever before. Okay, so Iraq is not falling apart. Yes, the protests are still going on. We know that. We know they got high unemployment, but that's about to change. Okay. This is, the economy is struggling, and this person goes on to make a comparison of how the oil production reached a 35-year high at $3.2 million barrels per day. Okay, so that seems pretty good. You would think the Kurds forces and ISIS didn't hurt production too much. Okay, but here's the thing: Iraq's oil production is almost just close to, it's about 4.4, 4.5 million barrels a day. All right, so this is talking about 3.2. The oil production is back up. We know they are with OPEC. We know they're second only to Saudi Arabia. As a matter of fact, Saudi was complaining that Iraq was producing way too much oil and told them to cut back a little bit just so that they can, the supply and demand, it would cause the value of the oil to go up per barrel. Okay, and so we'll see that in other articles as well. So here's a revision. This is Iraq. The World Bank did a Iraq's economical update for October 2019. Now I'm gonna leave this right here, but it talks about it's gradually rebounding after having a couple years where the GDP had contracted. Okay, so went down, it was not good, but it's been revised. So growth can be mainly attributed to the rise of crude oil production. It's up 6.3%. And a rebound of non-oil economical activity. Okay, crude oil production is a significantly success story for Iraq. Prior to 2014, they had been doubts as to whether the production could be sustained above 3 million barrels a day, whereas it's currently within striking distance of 5 million barrels per day. So it's way up above expectation, almost double. So if they were worried about them maintaining somewhere around 3 million barrels and they're closer to 5, I would say that's a pretty good jump. Okay, so what else? Goes on to talk about where oil prices are. Okay, we know that supply and demand. It's the same anywhere. With OPEC cutting back production in oil, then it's just only going to cause the cost of oil to go up. Again, Iraq is second only to Saudi Arabia. So when you go to look at I hear people talk about this, the Brent crude oil price. That's the wrong one to look at. It's not the Brent crude. Okay. You're looking for the Basra. OPEC has their own group on oil production charts. So if you go there, you can see all the countries that make up OPEC, and you can see that Iraq's oil is called the Basra, okay? Not the Brent crude oil, it's the Basra. And as a matter of fact, it's somewhere between $8 to $9 per barrel more in value than the Brent crude oil, okay? So that's good. That's what we want. We want that to be higher. We want production to be maintained, and then the GDP to go up. Now, here's the funny thing. Here in the United States, you hear us fussing over our GDP. Heck, we're just trying to get it to 3%. You're going to see instances in here in which Iraq is expected to be closer to 11% GDP. That's unbelievable. Okay, so they're talking about a projected GDP at 3.3 in 2020. Yeah, here's up here is the reason for the non-growth is they're saying in the absence of structural reform and accelerated reconstruction. We know that leads the reconstruction will lower the unemployment. It'll get more people working, get more people out buying things. The GDP will increase. Okay, but they're projecting it to go lower because of these two things: reform and reconstruction. So they're banking on it not happening. Okay, so what if it does happen? Iraq dinars do not trade on the global forex market. We know that. They're under sanctions. Until they're a internationally recognized currency again, then they're not going to trade on the forex market. That just makes sense. Okay, but here are some. Think about this. We know that NASDAQ went in there and updated all of the software that the ISX, which is the Iraqi stock exchange, uses. And then I think Robinhood was talking about putting the ISX on their market as well. Well, here's the thing. They can't hit the global market as a stock exchange unless their currency is internationally recognized. So this is going to change. For now, it's not, but it's going to change. And most likely it's going to change early part of 2020. Okay, because there's a lot of companies ready to come in there and do business. But if they don't have a secure currency, there's going to be problems. Okay. Iraqi dinars can be redeemed only in Iraq. We know that's not true. You can go to any exchange, foreign currency exchange, and exchange it, buy it and sell it. Okay, we also know that JP Morgan owns Chase Bank, and you can currently, in a lot of different Chase locations, go in and deposit your dinar there. And they'll just give it, you can deposit it, but at the current rate. So you won't get very much back, but you can do that actively right now. And not just there, there's a couple of other credit unions that are doing it. Okay. So this only being redeemed in Iraq is not true. Okay. Several U.S. states have warned about the Iraqi dinar scams. Yeah, we know about it. We heard about it. We know that people took a legitimate thing and they scam people for this, like the Sterling Group. Sterling Group, what they did was they took the Iraqi dinar, they took a situation that could have been good, and they cheated people out of a lot of money by marking up about 25% of what it actually cost to buy the dinars, misleading people, telling them that they had dates they knew for sure and they had rates that they knew for sure. And people went and hawked their homes thinking they were going to become these millionaires. No, you got to be careful who you're talking to and who you're dealing with. So the dinar itself is not a scam. The dinar is a legitimate currency. I can go into Iraq. I can purchase things with the dinar. So it's people that make this a scam. Okay. So investing in a foreign currency, people do that for a living. So to say that the dinar is a scam itself, no, there's bad people who scammed others off the dinar. Okay. Dinar currency brokers may not be legitimate, and that's accurate. We know there's people out there that mislead people. We know there's people out there that rip off people, but you got to make sure that who you're dealing with is a legitimate currency broker. I personally, this is not a plug for them. I'm not sponsored by them, but I buy my dinar from Exchange of America. That's where they're registered, they're legitimate, and that's who I buy my currency from. I always warn people to be careful when you buy any kind of currencies off of eBay because you don't know what you're getting, okay? And I'd be really worried of that. But find out, do your own research. Don't be afraid to look into different companies to find out who's legitimate, okay? Here's the biggie. A great deal of the currency already is in circulation, okay? This is disputed. I hear one extreme to the other. So let's think about this. I read a report that said less than 4% of its currency, the dinars, are actually in Iraq. 4%, which makes sense to me because if you think about fractional banking means they only have to have 10% physical in reserves of their own currency. That's all they need to have physically to secure. Let me reword that. So fractional banking, what this does is allows them to lend out and do business with 10 times the amount of currency it physically holds, okay, is what I was trying to say. So for them to say that 4% physically is in Iraq, I mean, that makes sense to me, okay? Just if you think fractional banking. So in other words, if they want to do business with $100,000 worth of checks, sales, investments, whatever they need to do, bonds, they got to be holding in the reserves 10,000 of the 100,000, okay? That's how that works. Okay. Inflation differential. This person, whoever wrote this article, goes on to say that it dropped at the beginning of 2014. Inflation was 4%, and it dropped down to 2% by mid-year. And they're saying even so, 2% is kind of high for advanced economies. All right, and I thought to myself, what do you mean? That's actually pretty good. So I went over here and I said, let's see where Iraq stands to other advanced economies. Okay. This is the highest. We all know Venezuela. Venezuela is actually probably the next best target to invest in currency. Look, there's Zimbabwe. Look at how high their inflation rates are. That's just ridiculous, okay? So what we want is lower inflation. So let's see where Iraq stands compared to the other good economies that are out there, okay? So let's just kind of scroll down. Look at here's Turkey, 10.56, okay? What else? China's at 4.50. So apparently they're doing better in China. Let's see here. Russia's at 3.5. That is their inflation. Brazil's at 3.27. So these are good economies. Well, they're not great economies right now. Outside of the United States is kicking butt. Mexico's 2.97. Not too bad. We can keep going down. And what I'm trying to say is this. The article makes a point. Here's the United States. Our inflation's at 2.10. All right. See us here. These are all advanced economies. Not all of them, but most of them are advanced economies. Then you get down here. Look at Kuwait, 1.6. Okay. United Kingdom, 1.5. France, 1. But look, you just keep going down to Italy, 0.20. If you just keep going down here, look, there's Iraq. Look where they are on inflation compared to all the other advanced economies, okay? So this article, although it makes a good point, I get it, that is kind of high, but it's not there. That's not where Iraq's inflation is, okay? So their inflation is kind of low. As a matter of fact, look at this. In 2014, like they said, it dropped down to 2.24, but it went even lower in 2015, even lower in 2016, and even lower in 2017. So their inflation is just fine. That's not a problem. So that part is debunked, okay? Devaluation is more likely than revaluation. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. And then they talk about high pressure sales tactics. I never had any tactics I needed to deal with from anybody. I did this on my own. Look, the Kurds have worked out agreements with Iraq. One of the other things that they were talking about, I think we'll cover here shortly, in one of the other articles, is that OPEC wasn't sure they were going to renew their contract, and they did. This is it right here. It goes on to explain in this article that OPEC has renewed all their contracts and agreements with people, so that's no longer a problem. Oil production is almost at 5 million per day. This goes on to explain that, the KRG and Iraq government have reached a good deal, so the Kurds are not a problem. And this is only going to help the economy, and it's also going to help with their oil production, okay? So we see this is a recent article, okay, November 25th, 2019. So that's not a problem. I'm going to leave this link in here because this is really good. It has a lot of good information in there because it does talk about, here's something to think about. This is the hydrocarbon law, all right, the HCl. Yeah, HCl. But in here, this person makes points, and here it is. Look, here it is, the Basra gas project. I told you Iraq's oil is called Basra, not Brent crude, okay? So what you want to look for is the Basra oil price. That's up to around $68, $69 a barrel. This person goes on, they're making a point about the hydrocarbon law and how investors are eager to get in there. Eager, and keep this in mind, they're eager to get in there and deal with Iraq and help them with their oil production, okay? But we're going to go in there and I'm going to show you how that plays into the whole revalue, devalue in part again, okay? Here's the big booger of them all. The auctions, we need the damn auctions to stop, okay? So what is happening is, this is another reason why the amount of currency circulating within Iraq is kind of low, because they've been selling the currency. Believe it or not, this article goes on to explain that this is by the hands of Iran forcing the Iraqi people to do this. Because if they stop the auction, it actually hurts Iran's economy and it improves Iraq's. And what that does is Iraq starts, the better the economy, the more jobs that are there, the more valuable the currencies are, the more the Iraqi people have, the more the Iranian people are looking at what's going on in Iraq and go, we want the same thing. And it causes problems for Iran. But I'm going to leave this link in there as well. And it goes on to make some great points, okay? How the auction is hurting Iraq. Now, we know they used to do auctions every day. I think they dwindle it down to 3 times a week. If not, I think it's 1 time a week. But it goes on to make the points why it hurts Iran down in here, okay? And it goes on and talks about rates as well. Talks about how baskets of currency and gold, how they need Iraq, that is the central bank of Iraq, needs different baskets of currency. We know their foreign reserves increased. We also know that they bought a lot of gold. Look at this. The gold reserves in Iraq drastically increased. Look at this in 2019. Way up here. This is 96 metric tons. Okay, that's a lot of gold. Okay, so they have, and this again helps with the value of the currency. We're going to show why this is important and why people who think the value of the currency is going to go down are wrong. Okay, so let's get past all this. Let me get over to this other screen. Where are you at? Here we go. So the currency devaluation and revaluation, this little article, again, I'll leave it in the this link as well, goes on to explain how the rates are figured out. Okay, so let's just look at the top part of this. Under a fixed exchange rate system, which is what Iraq is in, devaluation and revaluation are official changes in the value of the country's currency relative to other countries. We know that Iraq is pegged to the US dollar. The problem is if our dollar starts becoming way too valuable and Iraq can't keep up, then they're forced to revalue their currency and increase its value to keep up with the purchasing power of the US dollar. So, you know, with as strong as the US economy is going, it really is a far shot that they're actually going to devalue the currency. Okay, this article goes on to make some great points why. Under floating exchange rate systems, market forces generate changes in the value of the currency. This is what we've been talking about. If you heard me on the other channel, I said we got to get them unpegged from the US dollar. We need them to go on a free floating rate. That's what we really want. We don't want a fixed rate. We want it to float, because what happens is the rate and the value of the dollar go up and down based on what's going on within the country. Okay. So the fixed rate system, both devaluation and revaluations, can be conducted by policymakers, usually motivated by market pressures. So it goes on and talks about how the IMF actually oversees anytime a country does any kind of devaluing or revaluing of its currency. So what they're looking for is they want to make sure that you're not going to devalue currency and then, benefit from having, lower cost to do trade in. That's really takes advantage and it violates a lot of laws. So I can't see Iraq lowering their value. It doesn't make no sense. Okay, so I'll leave this in here and it goes into the history of everything, all right? And it does make some points. Under a fixed exchange rate system, only a decision by a country's government and monetary authorities can alter the official value of the currency. Governments do occasionally take such measures, often in response to unusual market pressures. Devaluation, the deliberate downward adjustment in the official exchange rate, reduces the currency value. In contrast, a revaluation is an upward change in the currency's value. We know about this, but it gives you examples. That's what I love about this. For example, suppose a government has a set 10 units of its currency equal to $1. To devalue, it might announce that it now on 20 of its currency units will be equal to $1. This would make its currency half as expensive to the American dollar and twice as expensive if devaluating it. Okay, so to revalue, the country might change the rate from 10 units to $1 to 5 units to $1. This would make the currency twice as expensive to America and $1 half as costly at home. So that makes sense, okay? It's cheaper in country and more expensive out of country. So remember when I was talking about the revaluation and the redenomination? That's exactly what it's talking about. Okay, so here we go. Under what circumstances might a country devalue their currency? So let's see if Iraq is any of these, okay? When a country devalues its currency, it is often because the interaction of the market forces the policy decisions has made the currency fixed exchange rate untenable. In order to sustain a fixed exchange rate, a country must have sufficient foreign reserves or exchange reserves, often dollars, and be willing to spend them to purchase all offers of its currency at the established exchange rate. When a country is unable or unwilling to do so, then it must devalue its currency to the level that it is able and willing to support a foreign exchange reserves. So where is Iraq on the foreign exchange reserves? I think I have. Well, let's look. Here you go. This is a recent article. This is in September. Which countries hold the largest foreign exchange reserves in the Middle East? So let's see where Iraq is. Well, Iraq's fifth on this list. Look how much they have. And actually, that's actually kind of low. They just bought another 30 billion, I think it was, recently. So they're more like up here. Okay? So they have more than enough in reserves to avoid devaluing their currency. If anything, they're positioning themselves to revalue, not devalue. I mean, here's another thing I just talked about. Look at this. The gold reserves have increased. You only do this when you're going to increase the value of your reserves. This is how you protect yourself from speculators coming in and killing your economy, okay? So also take a look at imports and exports, okay? So I bring that up because this article does talk about devaluation when the exports and imports make a difference, okay? A key effect to devaluating, did I read this up here yet? I'll leave this link so you guys can, I'll leave it in the thing so you guys can come back and check it out. So a key effect of devaluing is to make the domestic currency cheaper relative to other countries. There are two implications of a devaluation. First, devaluation makes the country's exports relatively less expensive for foreigners. Second, the devaluation makes foreign products relatively more expensive for domestic consumers, thus discouraging imports. This may help to increase the country's exports and decrease its imports, and may therefore help to reduce the current account deficit. Okay, so they don't have a huge trade deficit. They have a trade surplus. Okay, so there would be no reason for Iraq to go and devalue their currency when they have a surplus. Okay, they're not in a negative. They have a surplus. So they're not deficient in their trade, especially with the United States. Okay, so it says there are other policy issues that might lead a country to change its fixed rate. Okay. For example, rather than importing unpopular fiscal spending policies, a government might, or implementing, not importing, my bad, A government might try to use devaluing to boost aggregate demand on the economy in an effort to fight unemployment. So, right, we know they have a high unemployment right now, but I'm going to tell you why that might be backwards, okay? Revaluing, which makes a currency more expensive, might be an undertaking in an effort to reduce the current account surplus. Didn't I just say they have an account surplus? They got an account surplus where exports exceed imports. Okay, so what they're saying here is they want to reduce the current account surplus where exports exceed imports. So what are they saying here? You revalue when you want to change your surplus when your exports are higher than your imports. So revalue when your exports are higher than your imports. Do you see that there? It's almost doubled. Okay, so they have twice as much, they're doing twice as much exporting as they do importing. So again, what does this say? It says revaluation, which makes a currency more expensive, might be undertaken in an effort to reduce the current account surplus, where exports exceed imports, or to attempt to contain inflationary pressures. There's no inflationary pressures. They got one of the lowest inflations all over. Okay, so the devaluation doesn't make sense. You got foreign investors wanting to come into Iraq. They want to invest. If you start screwing around with your currency, that's going to discourage people from coming in. As a matter of fact, I think they talk about it a little bit here. The effects of devaluing. A significant danger is that the increase of price of imports and stimulating great demand for domestic products, devaluation can aggravate inflation. If this happens, a government may have to raise interest rates to control inflations. We know their interest rates are low. We just saw that the other day. I think they're somewhere around 3%. So it's way low. Okay. So why would they want to increase their interest rates? That just hurts their economy. It doesn't make no sense. Another risk from devaluating is psychological. To the extent that devaluation is viewed as a sign of a weak economy, okay, that you're not credit worthy. A nation's in jeopardy. So do you see what I'm saying? Why would they want? They're trying too hard right now to get back on the international scene. They're trying to prove to the world that they are ready to go out there and play with the big boys. So why would you want to devalue your currency when you're trying to show the world that you're capable of taking off the training wheels and start riding on your own? Okay, it doesn't make no sense to do that. Devaluation does not make sense. Okay, so if you go through, and I'll leave the link for this so you could go through and see this, it makes a lot of great points why a country revalues or devalues. Again, it's saying here revaluation is when, what? When your exports are higher than your imports, or you got higher reserves, okay? So it's not going to happen. There's not going to be a devaluing of the currency. The oil production is up almost double where it was in 2012. It's close to 5 million barrels per day, and they're predicted to be between $5 and $6 million in 2020. Their inflation is low. Their interest rate is low. One of the things that's hurting them is the fact that the people need jobs. But what is holding it up? Well, we all know that the reconstruction needs to get started. In order to attract outside investors, they can't afford to devalue the currency. It's just not going to happen. For outside investors would be hesitant to go in there because the cost would be ridiculous. Okay, so we know the reserve, they're fifth out of all the other nations, and again, I think they're closer to third than anywhere else. That's changed. Okay, the gold is up, their reserves are up, their imports and exports are, the exports are more than double of their imports. So again, a revaluation is more likely to happen than a devaluation. Okay, I just wanted to bring these points up. I will leave these articles in there for you guys to check out, and I will post them in my group. For those of you who are unaware, I have a Facebook group where there's a lot of people sharing so much information in there. It's the same as my YouTube channel name. It's Pimpy's Investment Chat. I'll leave the link so you could go to it as well. All right. I hope this makes sense. I hope this helps. I know it's kind of a long-winded video, but I'll leave the article links so that you can go check them out yourself. All right. Have a good day.